Morena, no mai, haere mai, ki te hui Aotearoa, New Zealand Food Safety Science and Research Centre. Ko Vivian Hunt ho, ka nui te mihi nui, ki koutou te mua. Hi, my name is Vivian Hunt, and on behalf of the New Zealand Food Safety Science and Research Centre, I'd like to welcome you all here to the first of our Spotlight on Food Safety Science seminars for 2021. So today we are running a repeat of the workshop we ran in December at the Food Bowl, where we looked at the safety of novel foods. And we have two speakers, Ben Sutherland, who's the Principal Food Technologist from FSSRC, and also Angus Brown, who is the CEO of Arepa, and he is going to give us a little case study of his brain drink, but I'll talk more about that later. But first up, we'll have Ben, and he's the, as I said, the Principal Food Technologist at the Food Standards Australia, New Zealand, in FSSRC, which is based in Wellington, and he is also the chair of the Central Branch of New Zealand Advanced Technology. He worked for many years in the food industry, both as a chef and in new product development. He had roles with various companies, FMCG companies such as Cerebus, Foods, Heinz, Unilever, and Cadbury, and also worked for Silverford Farmers and there, and biotech company This Technology. Ben will bring food technology input into business, many key initiatives and applications to amend the Food Standards Code. He's currently overseeing a review of the regulations of caffeine in the food supply. He has a Bachelor of Commerce and Applied Science from Otago University. So I will hand over to Ben, and just for those who haven't joined us for a while, I'm going to keep your mouse on mute. If you have questions during this, just put them on to chat, and I'll facilitate discussion of those questions afterwards. And after Ben speaks for about 15, 20 minutes, I'll make this switch over. So thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Vivian. What an introduction. So I'm here today, folks, and welcome to talk about novel foods and the assessment process that FSSRC has for novel foods. So this is the overview. So we'll look at what novel foods are, what the current regulations are. We'll look at the pre-market assessment process. We'll look at the Advisory Committee of Novel Foods. I've got a couple of case studies, and then there's some further information on how to go about making an application. So, question, what are novel foods? So, novel foods are non-traditional foods that require an assessment of public health and safety before they can be added to the food supply. So, a non-traditional food means a food or a substance derived from a food or any other substance that does not have a history of human consumption in Australia or New Zealand. So, that's the key part. There's no history of safe use in this region. Obviously, Food Standards Australia, New Zealand covers both regions. There's a common food standards code. Categories of novel foods. So categories could be plants or animals or their components, plants or animal extracts. There's also herbs, just used as themselves, or extracts from herbs. Dietary macro components, and I've got an example of one of those later on in the talk. It could be a single entity chemical or a microorganism, including probiotics, or it could be a food produced from new sources or by new processes. So it's not just about the food itself, it's also how it's processed. So the current regulations in the Food Standards Code, the standard 1.5.1 novel foods. So there's about 14 novel foods in there at the moment, and also Schedule 25, which lists the novel foods. So there's some examples there. So there's some of the cyclodestrins, DHA-rich microalgae, isomaltulose, phytosterols, G-tagatose, and some specialist sweeteners there at the end. So there's quite a few coming through now. We have many inquiries. Not all of them come to pass to end up in the code, but we're certainly getting plenty of inquiries, and I'll explain the process through the ACNF shortly. So we have a pre-market safety assessment process, and what that covers, it covers the potential for adverse effects in humans. It looks at the composition and the structure of food, the process by which the food is being prepared, the source from the food, is it derived from a plant, is it extracted from a plant, Is it grown through fermentation? Is it from a genetically modified microorganism? But we look at all those sorts of things. Also look at the patterns and levels of consumption of the food. So, for example, it might have a history of safe use in another country, but will that use be the same in this region? And any other relevant matters we look at as well. So the pre-market assessment, during that we apply the Codex risk analysis framework. So we do a risk assessment. So within that there's toxicology assessment, a food technology assessment, there's a nutrition assessment, depending on what the product is. We do a assessment of the benefit or the efficacy, because these things need to actually work. We do dietary exposure, as I mentioned before. Is it being used the same as the traditional use, and what are those levels? And then we look at the consumer and economic benefits as well. And then we have ways of managing those risks. So, for example, we can put a specification in the code. The code does reference specifications for substances, but if there's no recognised reference, we'll write our own specification within the code in Schedule 3. Use level, so we can put in the maximum permitted level in any food and also any food class. So we can restrict the use by giving it different categories that it can be used in. There's labelling advice, obviously if it's, it'll be listed on the ingredient list, so that informs the consumer. We can provide advice on our website, and on the odd occasion we can actually write a code of practice. So this is a pre-market assessment process. So we start at the black arrow there, so pre-application assistance. So this is quite important, and that can be as simple as picking up the phone and giving us a call or sending us an email. And we really encourage applicants to do that because it's quite an involved and tricky process. So we're available to help with that. So an application is submitted and it can be paid or unpaid. So unpaid is great because it doesn't cost anything. And paid, what that does is that expedites the start date. So normally, let's say we have an average statutory timeline for an application for 9 months. So if someone submitted an application tomorrow, unpaid, that would go in the queue. So we might get to start on it at the end of this year. However, if it was a paid application, as soon as we receive the money, we start work on that. Looking at an average 9-month assessment, you're probably looking about $57,000 for that assessment. Some of the major ones we do, they could go up to over $200,000. So there's a fair bit of money involved. So but there is that option if you want to expedite the assessment. It doesn't shorten the assessment time period, it just brings the start date forward. So once we get the application, we do what's called an admin assessment report. And so what we're doing is we're checking the application against the requirements on the application handbook. So there's pretty much a handbook on our website, and it steps you through all the data requirements that you need. So we check it to make sure all of it is there, because if it's not, it won't necessarily be rejected, but it could be sent back to the applicant to be improved. Because what we do is during the assessment, so that's the light green part in the middle, we assess the information provided by the applicant. So we don't go and look for the information, we rely on the information provided in the application. And so that light green arrow in the middle, so that's where we do our risk assessment, our risk management. And then we always consult, so everything we do is in the public eye. So we put out a consultation to industry, to stakeholders, jurisdictions, pretty much individuals, anyone, so they have the opportunity to comment on what we're proposing. Once that consultation period is finished, we make a recommendation to the FSSR's board, and they meet 8 times a year, and they're the decision makers in the agency. So up until then, it's just the scientists and risk managers making a recommendation. Once the board's considered it, it goes to what's called the Food Ministers Meeting. That's a new name. It was the Ministerial Forum on Food Regulation, but they changed their name last week, so it's now. So this is where the Food Minister from New Zealand and 8 from Australia meet up, and they pretty much vote on what we're recommending. Okay, so the Advisory Committee on Novel Food, so that provides opinions on whether the food, ingredient or component of food is novel or not. It comprises of FSSAN scientists and enforcement agencies. So we'll have a food scientist on there, we'll have a toxicologist, we have regulatory experts from MPI and all around Australia. So it's a veritable who's who of the regulation world around here. So you couldn't have a better team of experts looking at your submission there. So the opinions are published on FSSAN's website. It's voluntary. No one has to do it, but it's a really great guidance tool if you're not sure. If you're not sure whether your food is a novel food or not, this is your starting place here. And there's plenty of guidance on our website. Here's some examples considered by the ACNF, and this is what it looks like on our website. It's a table. So first one there, D-allulose. That was seen to be a non-traditional food and a novel food, and the reason for that is that the safety wasn't established, and so therefore it requires an assessment of proposed use patterns and levels of use before it can be sold as a food. It's a great ingredient. It's 70% is sweetened sugar, but only has 10% of the calories. So we've had a lot of inquiries around that, but it hasn't yet been submitted as a novel food. Next one down, Horopito. There's a couple of local ones there. So that was used as, the use there was as a seasoning or a spice, similar to pepper, and the outcome view was that it was a traditional food and not a novel food because it was a traditional use in New Zealand as a food. Kawa dried leaf, and this is for a herbal infusion similar to a tea, so that was seen as a traditional food in New Zealand and not a novel food. Now, interesting part about that is that this view relates only to the use of the dried leaf in a herbal infusion. So that means you can use it as a tea because it's got the traditional use by the Maori and the early settlers. But if you were to use it any other way, as say as a spice or something else, it wouldn't be. It would be a novel food. And just to show, we get some interesting ones there. There's hydrolyzed keratin from sheep's wool, and the view was that it's a non-traditional food, not novel. And well, obviously sheep's wool is not a traditional food. And the safety wasn't established, and I think in this instance, the applicant didn't provide enough information. Okay, so here's the first case study. So this is application A1175, which is application to limit rapeseed protein isolate. So there's the brand name canola pro, it's known as. So this was submitted in 2009 by DSM Nutritional Products in Asia Pacific, and assessed under the general application. So that means there's one round of public consultation, and again, probably around about a minimum of $57,000 for this one. So what is the protein isolate? So it's extracted from rapeseed cake, so it's a byproduct from rapeseed oil production, and it's traditionally used for animal feed, and what they think is that if they can turn all the canola protein in the world, if it was used for human consumption, they'll have enough protein for 500 million people, so that's pretty good. It provides a sustainable source of high nutrition value, and functionally it's quite got a smooth mouthfeel, good taste profile. So, for example, if anyone's added soy protein to something, it can make it taste a bit strange. So these are desirable functional properties for the food manufacturer. And it's intended to be used as a protein source in a wide range of food applications, similar to animal, soy or pea proteins. That photo down at the bottom is interesting. That that's in Cowra in New South Wales. So when the fields are in flower, everyone flocks out there from the city to get their photos taken. And what they do with it over there is that the farmers will either sell it for oil production or they'll graze it. And that photo was taken October last year. Last year they let the sheep in there because the price of sheep meat was quite high. So instead of turning into oil, they use it as food. So challenges, what challenges do we have? So it's a novel food, so obviously it will go into Schedule 25. There was no primary source specification. Earlier I spoke about the code refers to a specification, that's fine. In this case there was none. So we wrote a specification for identity and purity, and that also has micro specifications in it as well. And funny thing about this, is not actually produced on a commercial scale yet. So there was a small pilot plant in the Netherlands producing this, and they haven't scaled up yet, and it might come to pass that a Canadian company gets first on the market. But there it is, it's in the code now. You can see at the bottom it was approved on about a week and a half ago, actually, at the Food Ministers meeting. So safety risks. So one thing that cropped up is that mustard allergic individuals may react to rapeseed. So it's in the same brassica family. However, mustard is not recognised as an allergen in New Zealand or Australia. Also, does it pose a microbiological risk for some foods that don't undergo a final microbicidal step? So, for example, if it goes to a product that gets cooked, that's fine, but if it goes into a just into a jar and it gets sprinkled on your food, is it going to be a risk to consumers? And also, what is the dietary exposure to anti-nutritional factors, phytates, uric acid, and glucosinolates? And in fact, exposure to metals. In this case, it was lead that we looked at. So how do we manage those risks? So we implemented a risk communication to ensure that mustard allergic individuals are aware of the potential risk from rapeseed protein isolate. So it won't be labelled as an allergen on the packaging, but those people who are allergic to mustard, they'll be able to find out through Anaphylaxis Australia, and also for our website. So we're making them aware that there may be cross-reactivity there. We included a microbiological specification in Schedule 3. We included a maximum permitted level for phytates, uric acid and the glucosinolates. And in fact, these modern cultivars are bred to be low in those anti-nutritional factors. We found that the metal exposure, and particularly lead, was similar to normal daily consumption of broccoli, so no risk there. So next one, interesting one, A1186, so this is soy leg hemoglobin, submitted by Impossible Foods, and this was assessed as a major application, so they spent a fair bit of money on this one, and it's been going about a year and a half, and so what is soy leg hemoglobin? So it's synthesized from genetically modified yeast, Pitchopastores, which expresses the leg hemoglobin gene from the soybean nodule. So in that photo on the right, there's a little red dish at the top. So that's the soy leg hemoglobin on there. Pretty much looks like blood. And to the left, the soybean plant. So what the root nodules on the soybean plant, if you pull them off and squeeze them, they're pink inside. So what Impossible Foods have done, they've found a way to grow that soy leg hemoglobin through fermentation. So, and it's the philosophy of theirs that against raising animals for eating, but also they're also against growing vast tracts of soybeans to dig them up and pull the nodules off the root. So they've found a novel way of producing this ingredient. You can see all the other ingredients around the side there: coconut, there's potato protein, some soy protein isolates, some peas, and bits and pieces. So we only assess the leg hemoglobin component. It's up to Impossible Foods to ensure that the rest of those ingredients are either just ingredients or they have permission in the code. So it's added as a liquid preparation, and the purpose is to replicate the source of iron. Challenges is a novel food produced using gene technology or nutritive substance. Well, it's all of those, but we assessed it as a nutritive substance because its main function is to add a source of iron into the diet for those choosing to have a plant-based diet. We assessed the safety of the preparation, so the soy leg hemoglobin is a percentage of the total preparation, so we'd assess what else was in there. What else did we do? So we looked to see if it was as bioavailable as iron found in animal sources. And also, when it goes into the code, it won't be a GM whole food, it'll be a substance. And we manage stakeholder concerns by labelling, so consumers don't get misled, they don't think they're eating meat when they're not. The iron levels in that meat animal products, so we ensure that they're similar to beef, again, if someone changed their diet and so forth. So this was actually approved as well about a week and a half, so that's big news for Impossible Foods in this region. So just a couple more slides to finish off with on I have a new food, where do I start? So pick up the phone. So what else can you do? You can check the food standards code. Is the food a novel food in Schedule 25? Is it listed there? If not, you may wish to obtain a view as to whether the food is novel from the relevant food enforcement agency. So here, NPI in Australia, it's one of the jurisdictional. And the good thing about those two options, they're free. And then there's the ACNF, so you can check the record of views, which I showed you before. And again, you know, it's all up on our website. And if it's not there, it probably hasn't been assessed as a novel food. And if there's no record, there's a questionnaire that can be filled out and emailed to ACNF, and they'll put it on their schedule of meetings. They meet about 4 or 5 times a year. And if there's no recommendation provided, if insufficient evidence is provided for us to assess the novel aspect of it. The ACNF it's not legal advice, so it's provided only to help inquirers make their own decision on whether they should submit an application to amend the food. Steps to make an application, so email or speak to us about pre-application assistance, and read the FSANZ application handbook. So I'll get this presentation sent out, so there's hyperlinks within this document to guide you. And so pretty much you read through the general section, and then there are specific sections for things like novel foods 3.5.2. And both sections indicate what information must, I've emphasised that, be included for the FSANZ to assess a novel food. You can also look at other examples on our website. So the two I spoke about, 1175 and 1186, but there's a couple of other ones there, 1123 and 1124. Your draft application needs to be thorough and not a working draft. And once you've got that together, you can submit the draft application. We'll do the admin assessment. Well, this is prior to admin assessment. We can provide comments on the draft applications. If it's up to scratch, that's fine. It can be formally submitted. There's just some links which you'll receive later on, and they take you directly to our website. There's plenty of reading there. And if you want to know anything else, send me an email or pick up the phone. Thank you.
Thank you, that's great, Ben. Thank you very much. So can people hear me okay? I was a little bit sort of faint, I think, apparently before. So, well, just if you could stop sharing your desktop, please, Ben, and we'll get Angus on. So if you have any questions while Angus is just setting up, please, happy to take some from that, but we will have more questions after Angus is finished as well. So no questions at this point? That was great, thanks, Ben. So, okay, I'll introduce Angus. So Angus Brown is the CEO of Arepa, which is an Auckland-based food tech company that's focused on nutraceutical-grade cognitive health products. He's an entrepreneur, having founded this company a few years ago and using his knowledge and experience of product development and science to craft this novel product. Arepa, which is a drink that helps with concentration and improving mental performance. I tried to get my son to take it, but he wouldn't. Before founding Arepa, Angus was working in business development roles with the Food Bowl, and before that he was at Frucor in a commercial role. He has a Bachelor of Commerce from Victoria University. So we'd love to hear from you today, Angus, and it'd be great also if you can, well, later on talk about maybe going through using the FSANZ process that Ben's just described.
Thanks very much, Vivian, and kia ora to all on this Zoom call. So yeah, I thought I'd just, for those of you that don't know too much about Arepa and what we do, I thought I'd take this opportunity to kind of talk about our journey and who we are and where we're headed. So we call ourselves a brain food technology company, and we operate at the nexus between neuroscience, nature, and primarily food technology. But over the past 12 months, we are looking into other forms of technology to essentially create very high value, very functional, mass appeal foods that benefit the world. And so our mission is to become the world's #1 brain health and performance brand. And the target market that we're going after is essentially 1 in 6 people worldwide suffer from a neurological concern. And that number was pre-COVID. So we think it's actually a lot higher than that. And when we say neurological, it says neurological disorder on this page, but we like to call it neurological concern, is that, it could be something as like anxiety before a social event through to more pressing and chronic conditions such as depression, dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and the pharmaceutical world, quoted by our new Chief Science Officer, who I'll speak about soon, hasn't really solved these diseases, hasn't really solved these problems. And science is getting closer and closer, and what is being uncovered is that you know, nutrition is a genuine solution towards delaying the onset of some of these more kind of chronic concerns. And what we're seeing is that these consumers who are a part of this demographic are moving towards nutrition to help them in their journey. We're not saying that we solve or cure these diseases, but we are saying that we are wanting to tackle them and undergo, you know, some deep clinical research to eventually prove that we have a beneficial health effect. So the total addressable market that we're going after is essentially clumped into these three main pockets. Neuro health is what I've just mentioned, around that 1 in 6. And they're really looking for foods to help with cognition. Nootropics is a fad term that is really university students before exams and busy corporate professionals. And traditionally they're looking at taking you know, capsule supplements or misusing ADHD medication to increase their focus. And what we wanted to do is move people away from that and into healthy, natural, safe foods for the use of improved cognition. And then there's this massive sports and energy drinks market where people are using sports drinks and energy drinks to enhance their performance. So what we've found in some of our research is that in times of stress, people turn to food, but the problem is that they're actually turning to the wrong food for peak performance. So this is the energy drink market is the first industry that we're disrupting, and it's just a way for us to create a presence in the market, but it's not what we really define ourselves as. And so what we define ourselves as, and what our mission is to create the world's smartest drink. And we have that goal in the sense of we want it to be intelligent across multiple aspects of how it's formulated, how it's researched, how we're putting it together, how we're protecting it, and how it delivers a felt effect to the world. And so we have 4 main research verticals underway in the sense of clinical studies. And what our 4 main verticals are to improve mental performance. So the reason why energy drinks are successful, the reason why coffee is successful, because it gives you a boost, and it gives you a boost of alertness. But the problem with energy drinks and with caffeine is that it actually exasperates your stress and does nothing for your stress levels. You know, it's probably a very bad idea drinking 3 cups of coffee before we go on and do some public speaking. So the second key element to our research is to not only improve mental performance, but also reduce stress and keep people calm and thinking clear under moments of pressure throughout their day, but also across their lives. And then the third one related to cognition is to protect neurological function or delay the onset of neurological decline. And we have some really interesting early stage results that I'll talk about soon, and some research that we're putting forward for high value nutrition in regards to undergoing kind of a neuroprotection study. And then lastly, whatever food that we want to inject into the world, we want it to be good for people. So what good for you essentially means boosting your immune system. And now is a time more than ever where people's immune systems need to be in top shape. And we're really blessed that the compounds that we have selected that are from New Zealand, which I'll talk about soon, actually also have other benefits towards improving the immune system. So really new news, we've just more formally announced publicly the signing of our new Chief Science Officer, Professor Andrew Scoley. So he was the Director of Human Psychopharmacology at Swinburne University in Melbourne, and he's now also an adjunct professor of neuroscience at Monash. And so he's come on board formally to help us with our our clinical study verticals, and help, I guess, from a kind of the pointy end and kind of a world leading neuroscientist with over 250 now peer-reviewed published journal articles in the space of botanicals and cognition, helping to us to really communicate what we're sitting on in terms of a formula, what its applications are, how we go about doing human intervention studies to prove the bioactivity that sits within our formula, and then also talk about the impact of if we were to inject 100 million units of our beverages into the world and consumed, what type of an impact does that have on mental wellness and neurological health worldwide, and how much could that potentially save? One stat that he brought up recently was that if we can delay dementia by, I think it was 1 year, we'll save the world $10 trillion. And that is, we think, within our reach within this business lifetime, by some of the research that we're starting and we're seeing. So kind of as probably from like the end of 2019, we had deployed $2.7 million of clinical trials, and it spans from short-term mental performance through to long-term neurological health. And then we look at different types of stress and pressure and how our beverage essentially improves that performance. And what we're really excited about now is that one of these studies has come back with a statistically significant improvement in short-term memory from a one-time consumption. So it wasn't like you had to consume arepa every day for 8 weeks and you see a small result. It was a one-time consumption of the beverage that boosted memory and stressed university students. So we'll look to, that's a PhD thesis, and he'll be completing that and handing in publishing around August. So we're really excited about that, as well as these new trials that we're putting forward towards funding. So our beverage contains 3 key ingredients. 2 of them are really unique to New Zealand, a unique variety of New Zealand blackcurrant that we own and we do research on. And it's not only research on the genetics, but also research on applying interesting technology, like I mentioned earlier, to enhance and express different types of activity in the berry in its infancy, and then that can be I guess stable over the period of growing. And what we're finding is that we have abilities to, we've finally figured out what's making it give this kind of neuro benefit and the compounds, and then and now we're seeing that we're able to essentially improve its that level of activity. And the best thing about New Zealand blackcurrants is that they're super high in vitamin C, they're super rich in color, they have more color and the combination of color out of many berries on this planet that are grown commercially, and they have really interesting effects towards kind of immunity and improving not only mental performance but physical performance. The other key ingredient from New Zealand we have is a New Zealand pine bark extract, which makes turns our formula into a supplemented food. And this pine bark extract called enzogenol has traditionally been used as a natural a supplement alternative to Ritalin for ADHD children, and used in higher doses for people recovering from traumatic brain injury, such as stroke or concussion. And they have a lot of really great anecdotal evidence, but they're a humble Kiwi company with a small R&D budget, so they are working towards more compelling evidence and proper clinical studies on this ingredient, and then they're working with us on our formula for studies on people recovering from stroke or recovering from concussion. But it's quite hard to do. And then our last compound is an amino acid that's found in green tea called L-theanine. We work with the world's best supplier on that, and it's branded as suntheanine. And the coolest thing about this amino acid is that it's a very rare amino acid, and it's proven to counter some of the negative effects that you get from caffeine. And there's actually a synergy, is that if you combine it with caffeine, you get kind of the reduced level of jitteriness and that systolic blood pressure change. But you also allow for some of that alertness. So a lot of people consume beverage dry capsules in conjunction with coffee to kind of get the best of both worlds and less of the side effects. The other thing that we like about L-theanine is that it's non-drowsy, and it's shown evidence towards anti-anxiety and anti-stress. So we spent a lot of time putting our formulation together, and over the course of the years, and as the research comes through, we've managed to acquire a number of patents that we're now kind of deploying throughout all international markets. And then what's really important is that we need to be able to scale, so that, you know, if we land a Whole Foods in the US or a major retail chain in Asia, we need to be able to ensure that we have scalability. So we've brought on investment from one of the largest blackcurrant growers in the country, and then we're also looking at a model to engage with all the growers of blackcurrants to bring them in on the journey, and also allow them the opportunity to really go up the value chain and have a share of the prize of the finished high value product on international supermarket shelves. So 2 years ago we won the Innovation Award at Field Days because of the science and kind of integration that we had with our supply chain. We also have investment from the company that does the pine bark extract, which gives us some barriers to protection. We won Startup of the Year for Nutri-Ingredients Asia last year, 2020, and then we get featured in a number of international food trend reports as like the future of energy drinks. Again, we're not an energy drink. We don't contain caffeine. We are a brain drink, and we exist to keep you calm and thinking clear. And our mission is to, you know, become a billion-dollar brand, but out of New Zealand, and be a brand that Kiwis are proud of. That's, you know, representing New Zealand on the world stage in food and beverage. We supply and do research with elite performers. So we're about to begin a study with the All Blacks, and we've been supplying the All Blacks. We have, little did we know, but Taika Waititi, New Zealand's like greatest director, he's a massive fan, and he's requested a pallet's worth of products to be delivered to Fox Studios in Sydney, where he's directing the latest Thor movie, Marvel Thor movie. And little did I know that he relies on our drink and our capsules to keep his mind in good shape while he's got this, like, you know, kind of 100-hour work week, stressful, you know, phase where he's directing which will be the biggest movie when it's released at the time. So that's really cool. We also focus on not only the science and the regs, but we also just look at, okay, like what matters almost the most, and that's consumers, right? And do the consumers feel the benefit? It's all very well and good doing millions of dollars worth of research, but if the consumer can't feel the benefit and it tastes horrible, then what's the point? Because it's not going to sell. So we've spent a lot of time on ensuring that our taste is palatable. We're not delicious and sweet, but we're more of a tart and good for you taste, but we do focus on masking the bitterness and the astringency of some of our bioactives. But we also look at how we're actually benefiting people, and we have some like really powerful consumer testimonies, and this is people reaching out to us and giving their feedback. And over the period of time, like when we first launched the company, we thought that we were, you know, just focusing in this kind of performance space and disrupting the energy drink market. So we thought, you know, students before exams, you know, busy corporate professionals and athletes. But little did we know was that literally 50% of our demographic were this 1 in 6 worldwide that I talk about that have a neurological concern. And what we're seeing is that the more they have this neurological concern, the bigger the felt effect of our product, which is great. And they go away really happy that they've found a food product that helps them, you know, think better throughout their day. We're also mindful that you know, our beverage is our I guess, our marketing Trojan horse. And it's for some reason, beverages, you're able to create the best culture and brand around them. You never see a music festival sponsored by a nut bar. It's always a beverage. And so we use our beverage platform as a way to kind of penetrate mass market around the world. But we also have other formats that are more cost effective for consumers who have a really high need state and pain point. And so we're trying to create the right product that is the most cost effective for these consumers who essentially need something, you know, every 6 hours. And some of the blood work that we're doing now, we're showing that our effects kick in within 15 minutes, and they last more than 4 hours, and we think up to 6 hours, where we're offering this kind of malinhibition effect, which is really quite impressive according to Professor Scully. So what's next for us is we've applied for 2 clinical studies on our Neuroberry, and this is around mental wellness and immunity and kind of neuro protection. Again, we're not saying that we do, but that's what the study is looking at is whether we can modulate certain aspects of kind of neurotransmitters, that if we show that we can do what we think we can do, that there's evidence supporting that we can help delay the normal onset of normal neurological decline as we age. And we're wanting to turn this product into more of a friendly, a smaller size snack product that will start to deploy into global supermarkets, kind of similar to Rocket Apple and what they've done with that small apple and the tennis ball tube. We kind of want to be the next Rocket Apple out of New Zealand with Neuroberry. And then we've got a shot product that we're launching soon. This just kind of goes into some, like, our business and some of our stats. This is just really saying that we've kind of completed, well, we're on track to kind of completing the New Zealand expansion, and now our sights are set more on the international stage, where we've actually just landed Coles supermarkets in Australia, and we've had inquiries from a couple other major retailers around the world. So we'll be doing a capital raise to help with that expansion. And we are kind of ensuring that we have the right manufacturing and scale to support that expansion. So that's really it from me. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you. That's really good, Angus, really good. Right, questions. I do have some questions, and also if you can come back online too, Ben, so you can answer questions. But one question for you, Angus, is how have you dealt with the New Zealand regulations around some of the claims you've been making?
So we use the current regulations are that there is pre-approved health claims for vitamin C. So we utilize the pre-approved claims for vitamin C to enable the statements that we have on our pack and on our website with regards to reducing fatigue and supporting neurological function. And there is creative scope to interpret that in particular ways, and we interpret that through for mental performance or for mental clarity. So the relation that we make from the regulation point of view, and it's a bit of a hack, to be honest, but it's just how the game is set currently right now, is around the relation to vitamin C in our product. But we know deep down, and we know from the effects that we are seeing in our clinical research, because we placebo match including vitamin C, and we go beyond just what vitamin C can offer, that there is really interesting evidence towards, you know, mental performance and stress reduction. And so we are working towards our own self-substantiated dossier that we will be submitting to improve and associate the full formula to a claim. But that's going to take some time, and it costs money. And for us, you know, we have seen you know, some companies invest a lot and not really get a lot out of it in return. And as trying to be a capital efficient startup right now, you know, our money needs to go into, you know, interesting clinical studies, and then try and grow as much on the sales front so that we do generate enough revenue to then commit to doing you know, these more bigger, you know, if you're a big FMCG company, you've certainly got the budget to do the self-substantiation. So that's kind of where we stand with it.
So have you worked with Fazans? Did you go through some of the process that Ben outlined when you were first starting up with Fazans and the novel food application?
Yeah, so we worked with Lindley Drummond, a consultant, to get an understanding, and I definitely recommend working with, you know, expert consultants in this space to understand where your food product sits if you think it's going to be novel. And we knew that our product was going to not just be a food, and it turns out it's a supplemented food. And so we worked with Lindley to understand where our product sat and what's required from us from a labelling perspective. And then we keep in conversation with Danelle Alexander from MPI with regards to the process required and the information required for the self-substantiation claim. We're basically waiting on one more this clinical study with the brain scanning imagery that I showed before to kind of have enough evidence to then put towards because a lot of our research is still underway essentially and not finalised.
Right. Is there any questions for Ben or Angus on call? Ben, I have one question for you. You said there's a new advisory committee just been announced last week, but I didn't quite get who it was, or it's an Australia-New Zealand committee, is it?
It's essentially just a name change. So it was the Ministerial Forum for Food Regulation. For some reason, they've changed it to the Food Ministers' meeting now, so it'll be known as that from now on in.
Okay, and just to confirm, the Impossible Burger now has been approved for New Zealand, is that right?
Well, the soy leg hemoglobin component has been approved. That was the only novel part. So, as I said, there's other ingredients they've put in there. Now, it's up to the onus is on Impossible Foods to make sure they're compliant, and they're not dummies. So, so it could pop up soon near you. It's impossible whether it's in the burger or just the meat itself, or the meat analog it is. So, there's something exciting. So, people can watch out for that.
Okay. And then I do have another question for you too. I've had some inquiry recently about hemp as a food. Is that a novel food as such?
Hemp?
Hemp, yeah, being used as food.
So hemp seeds are an approved food, so that the seeds must be non-viable, but not the leaves.
Not the leaves, okay. Any other questions from people on the call? For either Ben or Angus? Everyone's
I have to go and try some of Angus's drink. I get one every Friday from Lambton Key here. It's great stuff.
I have to say, I've been convinced though that too, Angus, so I'm going to go and get some too. That's great. I have tried it once. As I said, I tried to get my son to take it, but because he's, with slightly short-term memory problems. Anyway, I might try again, given the latest study, if you only have to have it once.
Yeah, so that was with our strong performance beverage. We do have a lighter sparkling one that's more of just a pleasant to drink with bioactive levels of our L-theanine and pine bark, but a lot less blackcurrant, just to make it more tasty for people.
Yeah. Okay. And you never successfully navigated the Singapore regulations to get in there yet, or you haven't at this point?
Yep. So we applied through what was it called, AVA, I think. And
the SCA now, Singapore Food Association, SFA.
Yeah. So we got our suppliers. It was our pine bark that was holding things up, and so we had to go through and work with Enzo Nutraceuticals to do some more analysis, a much deeper analysis on the constituents that take up that 0.01%, and they managed to produce what the regulators required, and as such, it's now been approved for use in foods in Singapore, which is a massive win for anyone wanting to, use pine bark in foods, New Zealand pine bark in foods, really. So we're pretty happy about that. But yeah, COVID's making things tough to broker deals at the moment, as no doubt everyone's knowing. Trying to do buy or sell-ins over Zoom is doable, but it's a bit harder. It would be lovely to be there in person with samples, but however.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, any further questions? People sort of a bit quiet. We had about 40 on the over 40 on the call at one point, but so thank you both very much for a fantastic presentation. And just to let you know, the next presentation is going to be on the 9th of April, which is Friday. It's because of Easter, we're sort of delaying a little bit, and we're going to have Joe Kingsbury speaking to us about Campylobacter studies that are being undertaken at the centre through with the poultry industry. So hopefully you can all dial in for that if you've got some interest in Campylobacter. So thank you very much again, Angus and Ben. It was a great presentation, and if you're both happy to have your presentations distributed via the website, is that okay? Angus, or you like to pull some of yours out?
Yeah.
You can pull.
Yeah,
you pull out the commercial.
I'll send through a PDF. Great.
Yeah. Send through a PDF of your presentations, and that's what will go on the website. Great.
No worries.
Okay. Thanks very much, everyone, and talk to you again on the 9th of April.
Thanks team.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.